Hey, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Troy Grable, your host of Teamalytics Leadership Live coaching series. Each month, our goal is to break down a leadership topic and have an expert in team and leadership coaching share their perspective and wisdom around that month's topic. I'm super excited. We have one of our senior coaches and also past customer of ours on our show today, Deondra Donald. Welcome and thank you for joining us, Deondra.
Hi, Troy, and hello, everyone. I am thrilled to be here today.
Well, thank you, Deondra. Deondra has been a lifelong educator and leader. Her first 17 years of her career, she worked in and around the education management and operations industry, primarily in the higher education, all while also pursuing her doctorate in educational leadership. And for the last 3 years, she has leveraged her love for coaching and developing leaders on the Teamalytics team as SVP of Coaching and Team Solutions. So, in our conversation today, Deondra will help clarify why the need to nurture in our teams is a critical success factor, and what outcomes leaders and organizations can expect and achieve when they invest in building a culture that embraces the need to nurture. Deondra, before we jump in though, I'd love for you to take a couple of minutes and share a little bit about your background. You know, when did you first learn about Teamalytics? And man, we're so blessed to have you. What brought you here to Teamalytics?
Thank you so much, Troy. And just a little bit about my background. I am a huge believer overall in both personal and professional development. It is my belief that they definitely coincide with one another. So, just growing up, I've always progressed and was promoted in positions, whether it be through sports or smaller teams, volunteer work. Regardless, I was able and humbly able to be promoted and go on to the next level, whether I wanted to or not. so, uh, this was a variety of different backgrounds from apartment management, hospitality operations, entrepreneur with a team. I sold that business briefly in the classroom and education, transitioning to higher education, sales leader, operations leader, executive director. But this is also in both the private and the public sectors. So my philosophy has been and will always be to push people towards their purpose. Sometimes people ask, I'm not sure what my purpose is. I believe it is my purpose to help people push them towards theirs. So that's just something that I've always been just wanted to do. So it starts with an upside down approach with the org chart, lots of success with putting people before the profit, creating a process. So all of this led me to become a regional vice president for a company within the private sector. And when I was in that role, I had my own mentors, but I requested that they provide me with an executive coach specifically. And of course, like I said, I hired one on my own. And then I learned about Teamalytics. Troy, the word in itself, Teamalytics, it was team and analytics and kind of putting them together. I love
Yep.
the name. I did my research. And then I met one of my now colleagues. His name is Chris Mayhew. And when I spoke with him, it felt so natural. I was like, oh, he gets it. Whatever it is, he gets
Mm.
it. So I was really excited about developing even more. COVID happened, the company restructured, and it did impact my position at that time. And I was grateful to have so many options, but I really wanted to be like Chris. So you ask why I'm here. I am here with Teamalytics to continue what I feel like my purpose is, and that is to push people towards their passion, also by guiding them and assisting them with leadership development strategies. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Deondra, for joining us today. Let's dive into our topic. Deondra, again, you have this unique perspective. You were a customer and now you're a coach. And in for our subject today, the need to nurture, can you first explain what are nurturing behaviors and what it means if your nurturing behavior is at risk, if it's too high or if it's too low?
Sure, Troy. I think that we should first start by defining, well, what is nurturing, right? What's
Yeah.
the definition of nurturing? right? And we believe that it's the tendency to express verbal or physical behaviors that benefit others. So note that it's our intent, right? So our intentions as leaders, they actually may change or differ from the perception or the reality
Mm,
of others, right? And so we focus on behaviors. We do not focus on personality. We focus on behavior. So whenever you think about nurturing, typically someone who has higher nurturing, or on the higher side, or if it's too high, at times they may struggle with setting boundaries, or they may struggle with over filtering their candor, just getting to it and
mm,
just saying it, right? And or they're really great at nurturing other people, but at times, they're really not nurturing themselves. But they're really great at building relationships. So that's on the higher end. So if we were going to then look at the lower end of nurturing, sometimes if a leader is lower nurturing, or if it's not an area of focus, then I've heard complaints that they have higher turnover rates, right? They're
mhm.
being accused of not caring, or they connect less. And there are some misconceptions, and I'd like to just briefly just bring this up when it comes to nurturing. Sometimes whenever, we would bring up nurturing, people may say something like, well, if I plan it or if it's forced, then it'll appear that it's insincere. Well, if it is forced and phony, if you will, then it could appear insincere, but we're going to ask you to step outside of your comfort zone. And there's small ways that you can
Right.
do it to stretch yourself, right? Another common misconception is that, oh, it just takes too much time. We're so busy, we don't have time to nurture. Well, you must be intentional, right? So people don't care, how much they want to know how much you care. And that definitely goes in leadership and jobs
Yeah.
as well. You really want to slow down and make sure that you're showing your people that you are nurturing, that you appreciate them. So you want to go slow so you can go fast. And then another thing that I hear is that, nurturing, sometimes they believe that it's a one size fits all approach, and that
Mm.
it definitely varies, right? It varies from organization to organization, team to team, and quite frankly, from person to person. So overall, that's, what it means, what nurturing means in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, thank you. You know, one of the keys to being a great leader, or there are more than one, but many keys to being a great leader and building a strong, cohesive, healthy team that is producing high performing results, um, is that need to nurture. But how have you observed organizations who have invested in developing their nurturing behaviors? How have you seen that transform their teams or their organization?
What a great question. So it really gets exciting for me because, I see the end result, right? It starts out
Yeah.
with typically a bunch of reluctancy sometimes. But organizations who nurture, typically they have these three A's. Okay. There are three A's in nurturing. The first A is acknowledge, the second one is appreciate, and the last one is to affirm. Now, there are different variations, and I'm going to break those down just a little bit. So, whenever I say the first A, acknowledge, you want to acknowledge everyone, right? So regardless of your position, if you're a leader, you definitely want to acknowledge the frontline employees. If it's a brick and mortar, you want to appreciate if you have let's say a custodian on staff, or your receptionist. Every single person matters, and you must acknowledge them. You want to seek feedback, right? And this is from everyone, not just your direct reports. Of course, in leadership there can be multiple layers, but you want to seek open-ended feedback. And here's the thing, you can seek feedback, but people also want you to actually listen. So
Mm.
this can be conducted in a survey or strategic one-on-ones, right? If you're newer to the team, or newer in the role, then perhaps you can do something called a start, stop, continue, or start, stop, keep. That's something that we've seen organizations do, and we have so much success with it, right? So and then also under acknowledge, you also want to acknowledge any potential conflicts and issues, right? You want to
Mm.
discuss them and how they'll be handled. With the team analytics, we have something called the social contract, where we are recommending that leaders get ahead of any potential issues, and then also discuss when issues or conflicts arise, how are you going to address it? That's important to do, not just in your professional life, but also in your personal life. How are we going to have more effective communication, right? So you want to acknowledge everything and accept what's being said. So that's the first A, Troy, is acknowledge. I'm going to go to the second A. The second A is appreciate. Now, this is probably one of my favorite things to do, is to appreciate others. So, but
You do
specifically,
that well.
yes, thank you. But appreciation, some people say, I do appreciate my employees. I give them a pizza party, every other Friday. That it's just a little bit of a misconception, because you want to
Yeah,
make sure you're appreciating your people. I don't even want to say correctly, but maybe organically, right? You can delve in and just become curious, ask people how they want to be appreciated. This could go into, even when you're looking at those love languages, some people, want words of affirmation. If that's it, then of course you can ask them how they want to be appreciated, and then you can navigate, of course, within reason, of how you can make that come to fruition. But one thing I've seen organizations with specific clients, something that every single person has whenever they're an employee, is they have a birthday, and they also have a work anniversary. They have a date of hire. So to me, that is almost low hanging fruit, small ways that you can appreciate your employees. But it doesn't have to be anything, blown out of proportion, right? I actually had
right,
a coaching call this morning, and I asked him how he appreciated his employees. He said, well, sometimes, I'll recognize their birthdays, but then, it became too overwhelming, because, I would run out and get them ice cream and do. I said, oh, you don't, recognition and appreciation doesn't have to be huge, right? You want to
right.
keep it simple but meaningful. So I think those are just, a few different ways that you can appreciate. And then the last A, Troy, that I've seen with the 3 A's of nurturing that works well in organizations, is affirming. There's so much greatness in a very meaningful affirmation, but affirm people not just privately but also publicly. So when I'm meeting with and with my clients, I'm saying, I'm asking questions about, how are you affirming your people? Sometimes I'm getting feedback where, sometimes they don't like it if it's public. Well, make it a standard, make it a requirement, but also, just make sure that you're affirming them open in front of everyone as well. So you can recognize employees by having perhaps a team member of the week or the month or the quarter or even the year, or a combination of those, right? So, but spice it up, tell them exactly, a great affirmation, you will tell them exactly why you're affirming them, what they're doing well, not just in general, like, oh, I appreciate your dedication to the organization. No, you need to be a little bit more specific. And so the more specific, the better it is. And also, it helps enhance the work culture. Okay. So, and I've also seen this helpful with organizations where, if you have a great work culture, one of the things that I recommend that organizations do, or leaders do, is to ask for feedback. Ask your employees to get on, either LinkedIn, right, and do a formal review of the organization, because you and I both know that if someone has a poor experience, they are more than willing to go provide that type of feedback. But how
Oh yeah,
frequently, right, do we just ask people for feedback and how we're doing? Honest and earnest feedback. That's an opportunity to also help you get better talent these days too, right? So
yeah,
when we go to Amazon, we look up a product, the first thing we do is go to the what? Reviews.
right.
Same thing. Like, so we can do that, and it can also show the world, like, okay, we have a really great work culture here. So and then lastly, with Affirm, just one of my mindsets that, when I was in leadership, is I would also tell my employees, I said, hey, when you're working and collaborating with me, you're either going to grow or you're going to go. Now, that wasn't a threat for them to leave, right? Even though initially they may think that. But what I meant by that is, you're going to grow as much as you can. And hey, let's say if you're growing and you're over capacity in your current role, I mean, they're likely going to go somewhere. If there's nowhere in that current organization, they're probably going to go, right?
Yeah,
Or on the opposite end, if they're not growing, then they might actually have to be performance managed out. But when I say
Right.
grow, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to get a promotion. It can just simply mean that they are growing and doing the best in that current role. And you want to be there to support them, to affirm them if they want to get additional certifications or go back to school, whatever that may mean to them. So those are the 3 A's of nurturing, Troy: acknowledge, appreciate, and affirm.
Well, those are great, three great, things that we can look at and we can actually implement into our lives. I mean, just to acknowledge a person, being, just open and honest, like you said, with feedback or listening, is such an important piece. And I really appreciate those 3 A's to nurturing. Um, can you give our listeners, Deondra, an understanding of what you've seen in teams or organizations before they've actually started a development program?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, one of the reoccurring themes that I hear, and I know we're saying, with teams and organizations, but amongst my friends and my sorority sisters and different things of that, people of that
Mhm.
nature, they know that I love leadership. So they're like, "Hey, can you come tell my leader this or that, or can you teach that stuff to my organization?" So things that I hear from them, in addition to organizations and teams, is that there's higher turnover, right? Or there's lower employee engagement scores, or the departments are siloed. There's complaints about workload or stress or limited career growth, poor communication, work life balance. And then also, even at times, there's office politics, meaning favoritism or a toxic
Mhm.
work environment or unfair practices. Compensation, of course, is a huge one, and the list goes on. But ultimately, when it comes to what I've seen in teams and organizations before the development
Mhm.
program, essentially it's just many issues that they want a fix. They're like, we've tried everything, so they think, right? But we need help. And this is typically what I hear, personal and professionally.
Yeah. And man, you list all those off, and in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking about the friends or family, or even in my own career, where you've seen one or two of those within inside of some environments as we have grown through our careers.
Yeah.
Um, with organizations coming into a program, a development program, coaching program,
Mhm.
they probably have a desired outcome or results that they're seeking. What are some of those when they first come in? What are some of those desired, results that they're looking from a coaching and development program?
Great question. So ultimately, they want the opposite of the issues, right? And
Yeah.
it all right. It all kind of comes to a desirable work culture. And once you have a desirable working culture, all of those positives kind of follow along with it. So, and what that does, it does lead to attracting top talent. Ultimately, at times, we've seen where it was able to create newer positions to help people, grow, right? So they didn't have to go. They are wanting and seeking employee retention, right? Because here's the thing, Troy: turnover can be very expensive, right? Turnover, I mean, there's good turnover, but not always, right? So if you
Mhm.
have high turnover and you're seeking help, that they want to retain their good employees, and they want to be able to do that. So we're able to help them do that. They want less complaining.
Mhm.
They want to have more employees take initiatives, right? So some of my leaders or organizations, they feel like, man, I really wish that we had more people step up to the plate. So they want them to take more initiatives. And again, this ultimately, though, it leads to increased revenue. I mean, any organization, they want to grow, right? So
Mhm.
ultimately, they want more revenue, they want to increase their bottom line, but there's so many different things within the work culture that needs to be enhanced. So that's why they come to us.
Well, help me understand then, as an organization or a team progresses through the program, What have you witnessed personally from clients, or even when you initially began with Teamalytics,
Mhm.
as they move closer to the desired outcome? What have you seen that's really been that's changed the most, or what's the bigger impact point?
So I'll start with me first.
Okay.
When I was leading a team, and then I'll go actually to a very recent example. When I was leading a team, I think there was so much reluctancy at first, and also disbelief. So as we have this goal, right? Every organization has a goal, every team has a goal, but sometimes it's hard to see how we're going to get there, especially if different leaders have been rotating in the seat. That was actually what was my case, is where this particular role, and when I was executive director, there were so many people who had revolved around the seat. The institution had never seen progress. Or met a goal that was very sustainable. So when I went in to talk to individuals, I started with my start, stop, continue, and just getting feedback, even just seeking feedback with the first of the 3 A's, with
Hmm.
acknowledgement. What happened initially was that they couldn't see a win. So breaking down, me explaining to them what the win would be, and us agreeing on what those wins would be, and then how we could get there, and also celebrating small accomplishments. I was able to have the top institution in the entire organization. So, and helping them move towards the desired outcomes, I also had to go back and say, hey, did you remember when we were talking about this and we discussed this? So I've witnessed that, and that is all with the assistance of having an executive coach. Now, on the opposite end, because I'm talking as a client, but now as a team member of Teamalytics. This week, I actually had a client that I started working with less than 6 months ago. And we studied 13 behaviors, but specifically with nurturing, he wanted to work on nurturing, and that was one of the top behaviors he needed to focus on based off of his data. So I was working with him for maybe 6 months, and he had low nurturing initially. And we had some ideas, but initially when I was giving him some feedback about what nurturing is, and how his behaviors may show that he lacks it a little bit, he was reluctant, because he just said, I'm just not good at that fluff stuff, is what he said. All that fluff stuff, I'm not good at that. So really addressing, helping him understand, well, what do you mean by fluff stuff? And, after us discussing and really defining it, he realized that, well, at times, the best supervisor that I ever had, he did recognize me. So we then kind of really just laid out what that would look like.
Hmm.
And then he actually decided, he said, you know what, I'm going to implement more recognition of my direct reports. And he said this week that he had added birthdays to his calendars of all of his direct reports. He had, I think, like 40 or 50, about
Wow.
48 or something. Yeah. And he added their birthdays to his calendar. And he then shared with his direct supervisor, okay, I'm going to increase my nurturing, and I'm going to recognize my team members. And so he did that. And then his supervisor smiled, essentially. He said, but this specific client had a birthday of his own just 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
And his birthday, he came in to work, and he saw this big gift on his desk. And then he said around lunchtime, all of the team members came into his office, including his supervisor, and they sang happy birthday to him. And he said he was so surprised, so shocked, but it also meant a lot to him. They got him this football, and they signed, and it was very personalized, and they affirmed him. So he experienced what he initially assumed that wouldn't work with the fluff stuff, but he came back to me and apologized, and also was like, you know what, I'm so glad that you shared this and pointed out this blind spot to me, because now I'm a believer in it. Like, I really, really am. So everything kind of clicked. So, and he said, and I quote, he said, I thought to myself, wow, this stuff actually works. And so implementing it. So he's now implementing regular recognition practices by making them a priority. And this is all from nurturing and looking at that behavior as an area of focus to address that blind spot. It was very rewarding just to hear. So I get to witness this all the time, and I just feel blessed to be able to be a witness that something works so small can make such a huge impact.
Oh yeah. And then he got to witness it himself by his team and his supervisor coming in and celebrating him. That's such a great story. Thank you for
He
sharing
did.
that.
It's my
Well,
pleasure.
hey, we're getting close to the end here, and I like to finish it with a little bit of a rapid fire. I look at my first question and I already know the answer, but your favorite leadership behavior to coach?
Oh, yeah, nurturing. Nurturing, absolutely, hands down.
Cool. What about your favorite productivity hack for leaders?
I kind of have a tie here. So I'm
Okay.
huge on self care. So if you can't take care of yourself, then you can't take care of anyone else. So self care is going to be the first one, and then it's tied with effective delegating strategies. I think more people should be able to do that better. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, last rapid fire question. The best leadership advice you've ever been given?
Easy, easy. So, two things again: do it afraid and fail forward. Do it afraid, whatever it is, and fail forward. If you're going to fail, you're going to also learn from that. So, in all doing all of this with authenticity, right? No one else is like you. So,
Yeah,
be yourself and be great on purpose.
awesome. Well, Deondra, you are a great coach, and I'm so grateful that you joined us today. Thank you so much. And thank you for giving us the nugget of the 3 A's of nurturing. And we just hope that people really do take that to heart to acknowledge, appreciate, and affirm their teams, even their superiors, and maybe even go home, your family as well. But thank you so much for joining us today. We'll have another LinkedIn Leadership Live session next month. We will be talking about the value of team and leadership coaching. Hey, and if you're interested in just wanting to measure what your team is up against, or some of the behaviors that they may be challenged with, we have this cool free team scorecard. I'll have the QR code here. I'll leave it up online for a couple of minutes. And then you can scan it and go in and just take a team assessment. It takes probably about 15 minutes. And if you want a one-on-one conversation around it, we could schedule that. Otherwise, you can just take the information and see what you can implement. Thank you again for joining Teamalytics and our Leadership Live coaching series. Thank you so much, Deondra, for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of your day and week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.